U.S. Attorney General Eric Holder wants Texas and its voting laws to go back under the scrutiny of the federal government. Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act required Texas and other states to submit their voting district maps to the feds for their approval. But in a speech to the National Urban League this morning, Holder said the Supreme Court was flawed when it decided to strike down Section 5 last month. The Department of Justice has asked a federal court in San Antonio to effectively restore the pre-clearance requirement when it comes to Texas.
Based on the evidence of intentional racial discrimination that was presented just last year in the redistricting case of Texas v. Holder, as well as the history of pervasive voting-related discrimination against racial minorities that the Supreme Court itself has recognized, we believe that the state of Texas should be required to go through a pre-clearance process whenever it changes its voting laws and practices.
All right, and that was the only state Eric Holder named, Texas. We want to dig a little deeper in this, so we've asked Chris Gober, a Dallas attorney who specializes in Republican political issues, on your screen right, and Democrat Alan Vaught, former Texas state rep for the East Dallas area, on your screen left. All right, Chris, I'll start with you. What's going on here? Is there some agenda happening? Is this just, should we take it at face value? What's happening?
Well, I think in light of the Supreme Court's decision in Shelby County, this was the next logical step for the Department of Justice. I mean, right now we have ongoing litigation in the San Antonio court over the Texas redistricting map, so it was an obvious place and time for him to jump in.
Next, for the Justice Department, but in a political way, or is this something that the Justice Department needs to get involved in?
Well, I think that this is the Justice Department's way of trying to revive the Voting Rights Act in light of the Shelby County decision. I think that rather than trying to rely on Congress to make some changes to bring it into compliance, they're trying some, I think, kind of some original and little-used maneuvers here to try to, affect some changes to the maps and the voting changes that Texas implements.
I thought the Supreme Court took care of this, Alan. I thought, it did away with Section 5, and so states could control their own. And not meaning to do anything, but as part of the ruling was that that's pretty much been taken care of, and states can police themselves. No?
Well, I don't think that's a ruling. I mean, the Voting Rights Act is still in place. They just struck down a part of the formula that was used to determine discriminatory intent.
Right.
So
it would no longer babysit Texas and make everything filter through justice.
Well, I wouldn't say babysit.
Okay.
I mean, the right to vote and freedom are pretty important things. I wouldn't call babysitting. And I think Attorney General Holder taking the steps he's taken is important because, let's face it, we've got a Congress that's a do-nothing Congress. The chances of them actually passing changes as called upon by the Supreme Court are pretty slim to none. So something needs to happen when you've got a situation where the maps in question today have already been found by a federal court, a panel of judges, most of which were Republican appointees, I believe, that it was so full of discriminatory intent that they couldn't fit it in their opinion.
Let me ask you about that. I thought the maps, now, you can tell me that something has changed, and please do, but I thought the maps, okay, Republicans presented, as if the Democrats were in charge, the Democrats would present maps. Republicans happen to be in charge now, and they presented maps, and they were found to be no good by a San Antonio court. And the San Antonio court, for the last election, said, let's go with these. That's not good, we won't go with these, we'll go with these. And then what was just approved, my impression is by the Republicans, okay, we'll go with the San Antonio court's rulings, right? And that's where we stand.
Yeah, that's absolutely the case. I mean, obviously, I think what you see a lot of the Democrats kind of raising this issue was the history of the maps that were passed by the legislature.
The first time.
Exactly,
right.
in the 2011 session. And the bottom line is, those are no longer the maps that the state is trying to impose. They've passed new maps, which were the maps drawn by 3 judges in San Antonio court, which presumptively were not drawn with a discriminatory intent.
To that, I would add, though, that those 3 judges were told to basically adopt as close as they could the maps adopted by the legislature. So even though they are maps drawn by these 3 judges in San Antonio, they're really more or less reflective of the maps passed by the legislature, which a different federal court in D.C. said were full of discriminatory intent.
Now, to add to that, though, the requirement that the court was supposed to draw there was to fix all of the deficiencies in the maps, but keep it as close to the legislative intent as possible. And that's exactly what the court did, was they went in and they fixed any deficiencies in the map to where it corrected any of the findings of discriminatory impact or intent that the D.C. court may have found.
Let's talk about big picture. Some are saying, you know, this will muddle things for 2014, the midterm. It could, and that's really the point. Maybe. Do you believe that? Is there some bigger picture issue here? Boy, we can slow things down and muddle midterm, and if we can get Texas in the Democrat side of things, off we go.
Well, I think when you're talking about a state with an emerging and rapidly growing Hispanic population, and there's a fight to get that vote, right? Both sides want that vote. I don't think this bodes well for the Republicans to have this fight. Whether or not the Attorney General actually stops voter ID and stops these maps, all of a sudden now you have a narrative in the next election cycle about Democrats standing up for the voting rights of minorities. And I think it may have some impact there, especially as you see the rise of the Castro brothers in San Antonio and other leaders around the state.
What do you think, Chris? I mean, is this a wave of kind of things leading to 2014, maybe 2016?
Well, I think this is something that's occurring. You know, it's a bigger picture and it's more long term for Democrats. I think they're wanting to make sure that they can impose provisions of the Voting Rights Act long beyond this, and not just to Texas. But I think that, you know, any kind of implication that Republicans are kind of opposed to any oversight over voting changes is wrong, because, you know, we led the efforts to renew the voting rights back in 2006. I think the problem is we have seen Democrats stop using the Voting Rights Act for what it was originally for.
Go ahead.
And instead trying to do through litigation what they cannot do at the ballot box.
Well, and we're going to wrap this up. I do want to know, there were several states under the Voting Rights Act, but Texas is called out. Specifically, none of the others, you know, Alabama, we're not hearing any other states. Texas has the most you know, electoral college votes. There are a lot of House seats that go to Congress from here. So why only Texas? Opinions? Why just Texas? Why not in these other states that also, you know, are out from under that provision of the Voter Rights Act?
It's my opinion that it ties back into the specific statements by that judicial panel. I mean, again, 2 of the 3, I think, were Republican-appointed judges saying that the map was so full of discriminatory intent they couldn't fit it all in the 142-page opinion. So I think that makes Texas a right place to start. Is there another motive to help shift Texas? Maybe. I don't know. But it certainly can't hurt.
right. I mean,
yeah, I think
Alan with the passive certainly can't hurt.
Yeah.
Can't get any worse, huh?
And I think it just has to do a lot with timing, too. I mean, the fact of the matter, we were in San Antonio court 1 week after the Shelby County decision. I mean, it's going on right now. It's ripe. Now's the time for them to take it on, if ever.
All right. Chris Gober, thanks for coming. Alan Vaught, thank you.
Thank you.
Good opinions. Thank you.